Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Nice and smooth. Happy Sunday, everybody. Got it right 2 weeks in a row, Russ. Yeah, it's been a mellow week, actually. Well, for me anyway. compared to what it's been like. Oh man, let's see. Ayal Peleg says, hello from Israel on time this week. Yeah, we did the daylight savings time thing last week and caught a few people off guard. But, what can we say? I don't know if or when the rest of the world does their version of daylight savings time. Um, you know, Personally, I can take it or leave it. I really don't care. I'm going to sleep the same amount no matter what the clock says. So, let's see here. This morning was the video for setting up different work zones on the spoil board surface went live, and I don't know whether to be happy and grateful, um, or if I'm kind of sad. But I haven't gotten one single comment about drilling holes in my spoil board. I mean, the level of hate I got when I drilled 10 holes in my spoil board last time was it had to be seen to be believed. And I didn't get a single comment. And this time I drilled 36 holes. I don't know. Maybe you subscribers and members scared everybody off, or maybe they just figured it was futile. I don't know. But I did get some good comments. But before I start with that, I do need to take care of some business here. And this is totally unendorsed or anything like that. Well, I won't say unendorsed, but he doesn't know I'm doing this. I want to say hello and I want to say thank you to Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media. You see him in the chat every Sunday. He is the only moderator I have on this channel, and he helps me kind of keep an eye open for spammers and what have you, and people trying to post links to weird sites that we don't want linked in my chat. And on top of all that, he also sponsors Mark Lindsay CNC.com, my website. And when I say this, when I talk about Steve, everything's right off the top of my head. There is no script for any of this because I sincerely mean it. I'm very proud to call Steve a friend. And I would encourage anybody who is looking to create or increase a web presence for your CNC business, or just a personal website, or if you want to start a web store to sell your products or your merch. Steve is the first person that I would recommend. Harneal Media is the first company that I would heartily endorse. He's very good at what he does. And when you're dealing with Harneal Media, you're dealing with Steve. It's not some nameless, faceless person in a call center that you'll never talk to again. You deal straight with Steve. He's very competitively priced, and he's just an all around good guy. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And thank you for everything you do, Steve. I appreciate you more than you will ever know. So let's get on with the questions that I got on today's video. So let's see here. The first one came as a comment on the video itself, so I can't put it up and show you the question, but he basically asked, why choose holes with pins that always have to be pulled out and not a threaded bushing or threaded insert? And that's a good, legitimate question. The simple answer to that is because I already had these pins. These here are some 1/4 inch diameter precision ground dowels, steel dowels, and I use these for any number of things. Mainly, though, I use them as setup blocks and as spacers. If I need to space a bunch of things 1/4 of an inch apart, I've got them. if I want to, for instance, this is going to be difficult to show. If I want to set up my router table so that the bit comes up a 1/2 inch off the surface of the table, well, I just lay these on top of the router table with the bit coming up through the center, and then just take any kind of a straight edge and lay them across those pins. And I know that when raise that bit up, and when it touches that bottom of that straight edge, my bit is a 1/4 inch above the surface of the router table, or table saw blade, or what have you. And this straight edge, this is a drill gauge. I've got a couple of 1/2 inch pins here. I've got some that are 5/16 of an inch. I think I have 3/8 inch as well. I don't remember, and I'm not going to get up and go look for them right now. But I use them for various things. So I decided, what the heck? I've got them, just use them. Now, I've also I looked into getting some of the 20 millimeter dogs, like for an MFT table, or yeah, that's what it's called, the Festool MFT table. And I looked into them, and I still might get some. I just haven't decided yet. But I figured I had these, let's use them. And I didn't have to spend any money doing it. And my channel members know I'm all about saving money. I am Scottish, so it's genetic. Martin Pearson says you might actually have problems trying to put threaded inserts in with the same degree of accuracy. There's some truth to that. No doubt you could drill the starter holes nice and accurate if you use your CNC to drill those holes. But now you've got to make sure you put those inserts in perfectly straight, and they don't get, bent or twisted out of shape. And as far as these steel dowels are concerned, they're great and all, but you could basically get the same thing using sections of 1/4 inch dowel. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't know what common sizes there are overseas in metric dowel, but if you size the bit and the dowel accordingly, you could use hardwood dowels instead of these steel ones. And the benefit of that is you could actually cut off small sections and leave them in place and not worry about running into them the way I do these steel jobbies. But so far I haven't made a mistake and left one in. Knock on wood now that I said that. So, but this is a case of whatever works for you. If you want to use, okay, Martin, thank you. If you wanted to use 6 or 8 millimeter hardwood dowel, then fine. And if they do wear, wooden dowel is cheap. I think for that 3-foot piece, well, I know I didn't pay $1 for it. Maybe it was 60 cents or something like that. So, this is one of those cases where there really is no best. It's whatever works for you. So I know a lot of people, like for instance, Jay Bates, he uses those 20 millimeter dogs, and that's where I got the cue to go look for them and found them and what have you. But since I had these, why not? So, and they do work. Let's see. Another question I got, and I'm not going to use his name because he came back and says I may have overthought this, but he was wondering about the why I put my alignment holes 1 inch on center from the edges. Wouldn't aligning the holes so that they're in, so that the edge of the pin gave me a true number in, let's see, true left and bottom of the piece. By aligning the center of the dowel holes, your piece will be 1/8 of an inch right and up from your XY coordinate. And no, that's not the case. Um, it because the XY0 is not set to the pins. Let me change my camera here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. We'll go over to the table here. When I set this up, what he's referring to is in the screen capture portion of today's video. I set the center of all of these index holes 1 inch off of this edge of my spoil board. And he's saying, now, won't that put my zeros 1/8 of an inch off here and here? Well, no, it won't, because the only time this measurement made any difference, or when it was even relevant, was when I drilled the holes. Once they were drilled, as long as they are square to the X and Y axis, their placement on the table doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. What matters is where I set the XY0 on the material after I mounted it. That's what's important, because with this corner being X and Y0, that's where the bit's going to reference from. So the hole placement and the dowel placement is completely and totally irrelevant, as witnessed by making this location over here. It's where you set the 0 for that offset. That's what's relevant. So let me go back to this camera here. All right. So, yeah, it's, both very valid questions. And the reason that I brought that up was simply because to help folks wrap their head around what I was doing and why I did it the way I did it. Um, you can set up a location, and so long as you're precise in where you set up that X and Y0, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. So let's get into some questions here. All right. Kurt Briegel wants to know, when using either the wood pins or metal pins for the alignment of the material, do you see any significant wear in the placement holes over time? I'm going to have to defer right now, simply because I just did these a couple of weeks ago and I've only used them a couple of times. So it's really too early to tell. Now, in the offset that I had set up as G59, I didn't notice any real movement at all, mainly because uh, the I didn't keep using the same pinholes all the time. So the only ones that I used with any regularity were the two right on the corner. But different pieces of material are different widths or different lengths, and so they got moved around. So it really didn't. I didn't really notice it. But even then, if I do, all I need to do is glue in a dowel plug, cut it off flush, and then drill again. I still have that file. And as long as I set my XY0 to that corner, I can go back and drill all those holes again if they should start wearing. So, IL Peleg is wondering how deep did I drill the holes? I drilled 1/2 inch into the spoil board, 1/2 inch deep. So, let's see. And yes, there are a couple of comments here. IL also said the wooden dowels are not that precise. You're absolutely right. And Dwayne also says wooden dowels are not always round. You're also 100% right. So, you got to kind of go with the flow on that one. If that is crucial, then yeah, I like these precision ground dowels. And I've checked these with 2 sets of calipers and 1 micrometer, and they are spot on 1/4 inch. And these came in a 10-pack. I've never used, well, right now I'm using 8 as a demonstration for the video. But I've never used more than 4 at a time. And that's 2 down in the bottom corner and then 2 further out, both in X and in Y. Let's see here. Russ over at Blue Line Wood Flag says he uses TSO aluminum dogs in pre-drilled holes on his spoil board, can move them around as needed. Yeah, and like I said, I looked into the aluminum dogs. Now, let me ask you, Russ, have you noticed any wear on the holes that you're drilling in? You noticed any slop or anything like that? Because I think it would be the same case whether you use the aluminum dogs or you use steel pins. I mean, repetitive installation and removal is gonna start wearing, and it's eventually going to start getting loose. So let's see here. Bill Stoffer says, if you re-drilled, would you go to 5/16? No, I would just stick with 1/4 inch. Once I plug that hole, it's plugged. I mean, I would just go back to 1/4 inch. So, and Russ says, no wear, dogs are big and fit tight. Yep. Okay. All right. Pablo says only 3 dowels are needed for location. Yeah, that is true. And I'll be honest, 99 times out of 100, when I'm orienting a piece of material, unless it's crucial that I do mount it tight up against the bottom pins, the front edge pins in X that run against my X, 99 times out of 100, I'm pushing them tight up against the Y because I tend to orient things vertically. I just prefer it rather than horizontal. But, if I have to, I can. I'm all about options. So, Martin says, been using mine for 15 months, stainless steel dogs, and not noticed yet. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see here. We've got some more question here. Gary N says, have you seen a simple way to put a pencil into a 1/4 inch collet and trace a cut onto the wood prior to cutting it? I've not seen a simple way of mounting a pencil per se, but you can get or make, or if you have a 3D printer, 3D print pencil and / pen holders that will chuck into your collet. If you have a 3D printer and go over to Thingiverse and look for CNC pen holder, you will find probably 24 different STL files you can download and 3D print you a pen holder that'll do exactly what you're talking about. And these are actually kind of cool because they chuck into your router or spindle, but they hold the pen or pencil off at an angle like so. So it doesn't interfere, it doesn't hit the router or spindle. They're actually pretty cool. There are also, if you look for CNC pen holder on YouTube, there's probably almost, but not quite, a bazillion different videos on how to make a pen holder for your CNC router. But as far as just chucking a pencil into the 1/4 inch, I haven't seen one. You know what? I don't even know if a pencil, I guess it would depend on the pencil, would fit in a 1/4 inch collet. But yeah, there's but I do know that a standard, let me grab one here. I do know that a standard Sharpie felt pen like so. Hashtag not sponsored, but Sharpie, I buy enough of these. Have your people call my people, will do lunch. Excuse me. If you wrap one single wrap of painter's tape around it, that'll chuck in a 1/2 inch collet. But the problem you have is it will just sit on the surface of the material. If your material surface is not perfectly flat and smooth, the weight of the marker is, generally speaking, not enough to make good solid contact. A spring-loaded affair is much better, and there are a bunch of solutions out there. And I just haven't gotten one done yet. I am a huge fan of technical drawings, and there are some old, like, patent drawings that have gone into public domain that I would love to get I need to get a pen holder for this. I'd love to draw them up and hang them up here in the shop. I love old technical drawings. And I mean, I'm talking about patent drawings from the 1800s for things like table saws and drill presses and things like that. I just haven't done it yet, but that's for some time down the road. It's not real crucial that I do that. So, Rob Sandstrom says, I use one Laguna cells on their website. Okay, yeah, there's an option there as well. Let's see here. Let's see. Bill Stauffer still talking about cutting the holes slightly oversized. If the hole is worn, if my 1/4 inch hole is worn and I glue a 1/4 inch dowel into it, I plug that hole. And then when I go drill it back out, I've got a new 1/4 inch hole. So it may be worn a little bit, but if it wears, it's going to only wear slightly, and that glue is going to cause that dowel to swell, and because it's only going to be worn by a few thousandths. So let's see. Andrew W says, I have chucked in pencils directly into a 1/4 inch chuck, just sand down the diameter. The problem is that the lead wears down quickly as no spring is involved. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I could, and you would want a spring-loaded affair to keep constant pressure down. That way, if there's any kind of a variation in the surface you're drawing on, the lead or the pen tip stays in contact with whatever it is you are drawing on. So, David Pingle says, did I detect you using double-sided tape in your video? Well spotted. Yes, you did. And in fact, I edited a part out of the video where I said, where'd I put it? There I put it. That I am known far and wide for my hatred for double-sided tape. I do consider it a tool of the devil. But that doesn't mean I don't have it, and it doesn't mean I don't use it. I just don't use it to mount things to the CNC table, usually. It still has its uses. If I want to, for instance, if I want to stick a piece of sandpaper to a straight edge and then use that as a long sanding stick, it's perfect. And in fact, if you take some double-sided tape and one of the paint stirring sticks that you can get at the home center, then you can double stick tape a piece of sandpaper to one side. It's an excellent little file for cleaning up if you do any edge banding on plywood. It's an excellent little file for cleaning up the edges where that edge banding meets plywood. And yes, exactly. It's two-faced tape. I don't like it. So, but it does have its place. If I need to stick down a thin strip gauge, a jig on my table saw, it'll stick it down and I can pull it up and be done with it. I just don't like it on the CNC router. I don't like it for using for templates either. I've had it move, and what made me maddest about it was I was finished with a neck, 2/3 finished with a neck for a guitar, and I had my template double-sided taped to the headstock, and I was routing it the shape of the headstock, and it was a warm day, and the adhesive on that double-sided tape loosened up in the heat, and it moved as I was coming around the top of the headstock, and gouged way into it and ruined a few hours work. I'll put it to you that way. And that turned me off of double-sided tape from then. I went on to painter's tape and CA glue and never looked back. But it still does have its place. So just not on my CNC router, usually. But for the demonstration, it was perfect for that. Okay, let's see here. John Thompson says, if not using a touch plate to set up your G56 coordinates and so on, wouldn't it be wise to use a 10 or 15 degree bit to set the G56 and so on? You could do that. If 100% accuracy, like I did using the touch plate, if you are not as picky as I am about it, then yes, by all means, you can do that. If you don't have Mach 4, I believe it's in the Mach 3 manual as well. They show how to use an edge finder in a spindle. I doubt that your spindle will go as slow as a standard edge finder, but the point remains that if you can do it with an edge finder, you can certainly do it with, say, a 10 or 15 degree V-bit. So long as you get that, the tip of that bit right there on the edge, you can use incremental jogging to get it right there on the edge in X and then right there on the edge in Y. You certainly can set it there. So, okay, let's go back here and see. Just got here. Can you start over, please? No, but thank you for playing our game. That's Matt Haas over at Awesome Wood Things. Go check him out. He's got some awesome wood things over on his channel. So let's see. See if we have any more comments and what have you over here. Okay, not so much over here. I do want to give a shout out. I got a follow-up email in I believe it was live Q&A number 180. So that would have been 3 weeks ago. We had a question here in the chat where a man by the name of Pavan Singh asked me about using a tapered ball nose bit to do a V inlay. And I suggested, no, it's probably not a good idea, mainly because when you cut the male portion of the inlay, it will give you those nice sharp external corners. But when you go to cut the female portion of that inlay, that radius is going to be there, and you need those sharp square corners. The radiused corners in the female will not allow that male to fit down in there right, and you're going to get gaps. And so I suggested to him getting a 15-degree V-bit. And he sent me a follow-up email, said, I made my first inlay and it came out perfect. Thank you. See the attached image. So let me share that attached image with you, and you will see what I mean. This is his first inlay. Let me say that again. This is his first inlay. And that is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. That is beautiful. I don't see a single gap. I don't see a single misstep or miscue. That turned out fabulous. Very, very well done. I mean, whoops, wrong way. That's not what I wanted to show. That was another, that was for somebody else. Anyway, thank you very much for sending me that, Mr. Singh. I really appreciate it. That was excellent work. And that was your first one? I'm going to be asking you for help when I go do my first one. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Yes, extremely nice. Extremely nice work. And thank you for sending me that. I really appreciate the follow-up. So often, folks will ask a question and I'll give a kind of sort of an answer. And then I never hear anything back. So I don't know, did it work? Did it not work? Anything like that. So thank you very much. Let's see here. I had a question over here. All right. Let's see here. Michael Mazalik is asking, any thoughts on attending the AWFS in Las Vegas in July? This is the first I'm hearing about it, Michael. I have no thoughts. I'll have to check into it, see what my better half is doing in July. Being a bagpiper, that is competition season. I don't know what we got going in July, so I can't say yes, no, maybe, or what have you. So I'll find out. I'll look into it. Haven't been to Vegas in several years. That's quite the haul. We'll have to. Thank you. I'll put it. I'll check into it. So let's see here. Have another question here. I am not going to attempt to pronounce your name because I will butcher it, and I hate to do that. Any suggestions for using an STL file for Pinewood Derby? The only thing I would suggest is check, just do a Google search for Pinewood Derby STL file. And number one, make sure that it would, tick all the boxes as far as the rules are concerned, because I know you have, it's been so long since I was in the Scouts, I don't remember if they have weight limitations or anything. Okay, I see you refined it. What kind of tip to use? Tapered, straight? I have them all. If it were me, I would take some scrap pieces of 2x4 and I would just try a few and see, once you figured out a design that you like, take a piece of scrap 2x4 and cut it with a tapered ball nose. Cut it with a straight bit and see which one you like best. I'm sure you can find some scrap 2x4 laying around. Now, it may not be perfect. It may not be the perfect representation of a Pinewood Derby car, but it'll get you in the ballpark. You'll be able to figure out if you like that angle with a radius on it, or no, I'd prefer to have a nice sharp point, or what have you. Um, the only thing that I would suggest is, if this is a Pinewood Derby car for the Pinewood Derby, for the Scout, is get the Scout involved in the CNC. Get the Scout involved in, if you're using an STL file, importing it, setting it up, teaching how to tool path. Pinewood Derby it's a lot of fun. And as a dad and as a former Scout, I know it's a lot of fun to get involved in, but it's supposed to be about the kid learning. And this is the perfect opportunity to get the kid involved in the whole thing. Now, the kid may never, ever decide they want anything to do with the CNC router at all. But the level of pride, number one, the Scout's going to have by saying, yes, I did that. And yes, I did all the tool pathing for it. Yes, I modified the design. Yes, we cut it on a CNC, but I mounted it. I did all the cleanup sanding. I did all the painting. I did all the assembly. People who would never, ever even think about doing something like this will just go absolutely nuts over their first time doing it themselves. So, and it's a great teaching opportunity, and teaches them to pay attention to math, which will help when it comes time for a report card. But I will say this. I want to cut two-sided, but it is a lot of work. Not really. It's not really a lot of work. You know, your kid he's watching you and is excited. Well, howdy. Number one, but yeah, first and foremost, have fun with it. Okay. That's the most important thing. Have fun with it. Second, get in there and do it. Get in there and do it. And don't give up on two-sided. It's not really that much work. It's flipping a piece over. It's not all that much work. I will link both of my two-sided machining videos in the description here as soon as we're done. And watch them, follow along, but fair warning, once you have that, I call it the light bulb moment, where the light bulb in your head goes off, go, aha. Once you do that, you're going to find that two-sided machining is addictive, and you'll try to come up with excuses to do it. So I'm telling you. Okay. I've seen that two-sided machining video yesterday. They're really amazing. I like how you use the dowels to align. Yes, and in part one, I drew up the design, and then in part two, I went out and I actually cut it. So if you follow that, and like I said, grab a piece of scrap 2x4 and try it on that first. But fair warning, once you start it, it's addictive. Let's see here. Okay. Channel member Aitan Tall brought up a subject here that's very near and dear to my heart. And said he got scoffed at in Vectric's forums for using poor quality wood. That's in reference to using pallet wood. Now, number one, you're never going to get that out of me. I don't like to use pallet wood. I think it's more work than it's worth. For me, I'm a home hobbyist. I don't make rustic designed things. That's not to say that everything made out of pallets looks rustic. I know if you've got a planer and you've got a table saw, you've got a jointer, you can make it look gorgeous. I know that. My problem with pallet wood is getting it from the pallet to a usable piece of material. To me, is time I would better spend running good material already. Now, maybe I'm a snob, I don't know, but that's a personal choice. But I would never, ever castigate anybody for using whatever material they want. And I'm willing to bet you those same people have no problem. The same people that were giving you trouble over that wood, I'm willing to bet you none of them had a problem using MDF, which I think of, I don't know, I think of MDF as a garbage wood myself. It's it is technically wood because it's a cellulose-based man-made sheet, but it's a cliche, but you do you. If you want to use pallet wood, go on, brother. It's nobody's business. It's your project. You do it your way. If you get the result you want safely within budget, you did it right. That's it. You did it right. You know? I mean, yes, Andrew W. does make a point here. Sometimes pallet wood can have chemicals and the like on them. Who knows? And a good percentage of the lumber that you're buying from the lumber shop could have chemicals in them. Who knows? I mean, people spray pesticides all over the place. And how many hands has that brand new piece of walnut or padauk or maple gone through before it got to you? Yes, there are pellets that are used for chemical. And you need to know that going in. You need to know that there's a possibility that somebody used something on there. And I know there are markings that are on some pallets that say this and some that say that. But how long has that been sitting out behind a warehouse and 3 guys have gone up and sprayed weed killer all over it, trying to kill off all the grass growing behind the warehouse? You don't know what kind of life it's gone through. You don't know what kind of fasteners are in it. Personally, I have one of those cheap metal detecting wands that I pass over every piece of reclaimed wood that I have ever run through my planer or run through my jointer or even my table saw. Uh, I do reclaim a lot of wood. I mean, I've got the more sharp-eyed among you will notice I've got fence boards sitting on the floor over here. I use a lot of reclaimed wood, but I check for metal on all of them because I'm not going to waste $25 set of planer blades on a $3 fence board, you know? So you do you. I mean, if you want to cut something out of Baltic birch plywood, cut it out of Baltic birch plywood. If you want to tear apart pallets, tear apart pallets. If you want to find some, if you want to reclaim tongue and groove walnut hardwood flooring, reclaim walnut hardwood flooring. You'll never hear me say anything against it. And just you do you. Let's see here. Look for pallets that are used for food or medical supplies. True. They usually don't have chemicals on them. True. They weren't made for chemicals on them. But again, how many hands did they go through and how were they handled after the fact? You pays your money, you take your chances. I have found the finest cherry and tiger maple in a pallet. I found a beautiful piece of spalted cherry. Some guy was using it as a chalk block for his truck, and I saw that it was cherry, and I I swapped him out. I went down and I bought a chalk block to swap him. And God, that thing was gorgeous when I got it cleaned up. So, so yeah, I mean, basically use what makes you happy. Use what makes you happy. Jim Matthews says MDF takes Bondo very well. Yes, it does. Here's another little one, Jim. A lot of people try to get nice clean edges on MDF when they're painting it. It's not Bondo, but prime it and then hit it with spot putty. Spot putty is basically super thick primer. Hit it with spot putty, sand it, smooth it right up, then paint it. Let's see. Oh, my wife chimes in. Yes, don't forget the Kamani. That Kamani wood I made those jar lids out of was a limb out of a tree that blew down in a storm. So, you get. I'm all for reclaiming lumber. I really am. I'm all for it. Lord knows I got enough of it around here. So, yeah. Don't listen to them. Let them be snobs. I'm snobby on some things. Oh, I think we all are. To one degree or another. I just personally don't think it's worth my time to break it down when there's so much other stuff out there. And that's a valuable resource. Get on your local Craigslist or its equivalent and look in the free section. And you'd be amazed at the hardwood that's on its way to the dump, be it a busted tabletop or an old desk or something like that. There's a lot of junk out there, but there's also a lot of good usable material out there. You'll find people, solid wood cabinet doors or drawer fronts. They did a remodel on their house and they have all these cabinet doors and drawer fronts and don't know what to do with them. Well, I mean, took my niece down to pick up a bunch of solid cherry cabinet doors. She wanted the cherry to use for something else. I mean, check with local cabinet shops. Ask if you can go through their scrap pile. A lot of times they'll just give it to you to get it the heck out of the shop. Check with countertop shops, countertop installers. Sometimes they may charge you, but it's not going to be full retail price. There's all kinds of sources for good materials. So, okay, I don't see any new questions. Let's see here. Let me go back through and make sure that I am not missing something. Let's see here. No, I'm not seeing any new questions. New comments here. Donald Harding says, I have a shop full of kiln dried lumber. I have more fun out of scrap wood gluing it up. I'm with you. I'm in the process of gluing up panels right now that are left over from a bunch of scraps from cutting out breadboards and cutting boards that I made last Christmas. That I showed that little dish the other day. Finally got the feet put on it this morning, and Linda's using it. So that's done, and she has decided she wants a end grain chaotic pattern cutting board. So that's what I'm going to be doing with these panels. I'm going to get gluing them up this week and start gluing things together and cutting it up. Let's see here. Andrew W says, sometimes Habitat for Humanity have some amazing stuff. I'm less inclined to buy something serviceable. Now, they sometimes do have good just materials, sheets of plywood or pieces of oak stock or stuff like that. That's true. Excuse me. But I'm less inclined to buy something and then take it apart to use the wood it's made out of, unless that wood is really something super, super special. I'm more inclined to go pick up a bunch of fence boards and practice a new technique. In fact, I'm gearing up and studying up and refining the techniques on tiling, which is why I have those fence boards. It's a long, skinny board that I can cut up that was headed for the landfill. It was free to me. It was heading for the landfill. I have no issue with cutting it up and learning how to use the toolpath tiling and getting good at it and getting refined at it. I have no issue doing that. So let's see here. Okay. Iton wants to know, dowels are great for alignment, but what do you use for holding it down? If you're talking about over here, it depends on the CNC table. It depends on the project. Like, let me switch back my camera here and we'll go back over to the table. And that's it. On this piece here, this is 8 inches wide, 10 inches tall. And where's my other tape? Here's my other tape. So we're looking at, what is that? 20. We're looking at 200 and a little over 200 millimeters. And 10 inches tall, we're looking at a little over 250 millimeters. That's got to be more than that. No, that's right. Okay. For this, I would use painter's tape and CA glue. And that's my go-to. Painter's tape, CA glue, and the accelerator. For this one over here, this one is 13 inches or 330 millimeters, and by 24 or 610 millimeters. I would probably screw it down, one screw in each corner. If I was cutting something out that I didn't want, and I didn't want to use tabs, I would go ahead and run some tape and CA glue underneath it to hold those pieces in place. But I would screw it down basically for more security. I've never had the tape and CA glue fail on me, not once. But when it gets overly large like that, I feel more comfortable with screws. I don't use clamps. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't like to use clamps because I don't trust them. Because I don't trust myself to make sure that those puppies are tightened down. So I that, and I don't like running into stuff like that. I know the bit'll cut through it. I just don't like to do that. So let's see here. Dan says he's up by Tacoma, Washington. What part of Oregon? Southern Oregon. I'm not too far from the California border. Okay. Marvin Mays wants to know what type of bit should be used to cut Corian for countertops. Everything I have ever heard, I've not cut it with a CNC router. I have cut machined and routed my share of Corian in countertop shops and on job sites after scribing. And it cuts just like wood, just like a dense hardwood. From everything I have heard when it comes to CNCing it, any bit you would use on wood, you could use on Corian. Think of it as a hard, dense maple. My caveat on that is I have not personally done it, but I know a lot of people who cut Corian all the time, and they say it cuts just like a hard maple. But they also say your depth of cut should be fairly conservative. Don't go for don't try to cut a 1/4 inch per pass in Corian. That's usually not a good idea. Shallow up the depth of cut per pass, your pass depth, and go from there. Now, if you go to Corian's website, and what I'll do is I'll look for a link as soon as we're done. They have a guide on they have a guide on routing and CNC routing Corian. It may be right there on the website in their instructions, or it may be a PDF for download. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I don't remember, but that would be the first place to look is on the Corian website. But from what I understand from the people I've talked to who do cut it a lot, they cut it just like you would a hard maple. So, and that's one of the things that I want to do is get into cutting Corian. Okay, I'm going to take this as the last question for today. Gary N says, I'm finding that after any cut of more than a few minutes with any bit, if I remove the bit right away, both the bit and the collet are almost too hot to hold in hand. Normal? No. One of two things or a combination of those two things. So 3 things. Either your RPM is too fast or your feed rate is too slow or both. Combination of the two. It should be not even really warm to the touch. You should be able to, as soon as that spindle or router stops spinning, you should be able to hold on to that bit comfortably. So if it's that hot, either your router/spindle RPM is too fast or your feed rate is too slow. Now, I don't know if you are running a spindle or a router. Most routers will well, most routers are variable speed. When I was running my Porter Cable 890, I kept it set at somewhere between 16 and 18,000 RPM. And then I adjusted my feed rate as needed. I would watch how the piece was cutting and then adjust my feed rate, increase my feed rate as it went. Because what you're trying to do is you're making chips, not dust. When those chips are made and are ejected, they're taking the heat from that cut with them. So if, as Steve says twice, please wait until that bit stops before you try grabbing it. But when you go to do a tool change or something like that, when you pop that collet nut loose and you start unscrewing it, you should be able to hold that comfortably. It should be maybe a tiny bit warmer than when you installed it, but it should not heat up much at all. So, let's see. Makita had a group of routers that had bad bearings that caused this problem. That's another thing. It could be a malfunction in if you're getting any kind of a noise, a squealing noise or an odd noise, that just sounds out of place, especially on a lateral move. Like it's fine running when it's just sitting there upright before the bit plunges. Any kind of um, an odd noise, there's an issue. Let's see. Mark, next time you make chips, please make some and show us how they look. Oh, okay. I can do that. Man, it's going to kill me not to run dust collection. I've gotten spoiled with that puppy. Gary Ann says, any chance for a future video to hear what a good feed rate and spindle speed sounds like? Okay. Your best bet is to go to the bits manufacturer and see what their quote unquote chip load is. The chip load is take a chip that your CNC is making and measure it with pair of calipers. That chip load is the thickness of that chip. That's how thick that chip should be. And if it's, let's say, just a number off the top of my head, 2,000th of an inch. Well, number one, if you're making dust, your RPM is too high, your feed rate is too low, or a combination of the two. So the next time you make chips, just pick up a few and measure them and, get a rough average. But follow their recommendations for chip load and adjust your feeds and speeds to where you can get close to that. And Vectric makes that real easy. I know I'm going way over time here. Let me get into my tool database and then I'll share my screen here. Yes, you can get feed and speed calculators and all that other good stuff here. But if you look in your tool database, and I'm just going to choose my 1/2-inch end mill here for giggles. It's a 2-flute. You put in the number of flutes that bit is, the pass depth, the RPM, and the feed rate, and it'll tell you right here what the chip load is. Okay? So if that is the chip load recommended by, in this case, Whiteside, and I don't know what it is off the top of my head, you might want to back off of your RPM and increase your feed rate. Generally speaking, running 16,000 at 160 inches per minute, that may be a little too slow on the feed rate. I may need to take that up a little bit. But, that's what it is. If your bit and your collet is that hot, you're either running too high in RPM, too slow of a feed rate, or a combination of the two. Now, you may be choiceless. You may not have a choice on how fast you can run that machine. My Gatton CNC is that design of drive system, it's lead screw. It was not capable of going that fast because that stepper motor just couldn't spin fast enough to drive the gantry that quickly. So cutting at 160 inches per minute on my Gatton CNC was not an option. It just would not cut that fast. So I had to adjust my RPMs and play with the feed rate on the fly to get the right combination to where it was cutting good without a bunch of heat buildup. But okay, let's see. Dwayne Ruthig said milled some epoxy yesterday, kept slowing down the speed until chips went from dust to medium chip. The difference was going from 12,000 to 9,600. Yeah. And most, not all by any stretch of the imagination, but most control softwares will let you adjust the feed rate on the fly. Not all of them will. But a good percentage of them do, that you can adjust the feed rate on the fly. If you're using a router, you may not be able to adjust the RPMs on the fly. If you're using a spindle, I know in Mach4 and in Mach3, I can adjust the spindle speed on the fly. But generally speaking, it's feed rate that I adjust first. So, and that's just something that you have to get used to doing. I didn't put a whole heck of a lot of stock into chip loads and feed rates versus RPMs and this, that, and the other. I just went by ear because I've been using routers forever. And you can tell, if you've used a handheld router, you can tell when you're trying to force something or when you're doing something wrong, because it will give you that signal immediately. Well, on a CNC router, it's usually stronger than whatever you're cutting, unless you've got a real small, weak, thin extrusion. You could flex the machine, but you'll know if you're doing that. So, yeah, in G-Sender, I don't know if you can adjust on the fly. I really don't. So, um, yeah, okay. So I also don't know how to set up work offsets in G-Sender. So if any of you have a YouTube channel and you are really good with these other controller softwares, by all means, make some videos on how to do these things in your software, because I only know Mach 3 and Mach 4. So, okay, let's go ahead and end this. Next week is going to be an open Q&A, and one that a lot of people are waiting for, a video a lot of people have been waiting for, will be not next week, but the week after. I'm going to get into setting Z0 to the material surface versus setting Z0 to the zero for those of you who can speak, to the machine bed. I'm going to do both in VCarve, I'm going to do both in Aspire. I'm going to do a 3D cut on using both methods, and we're going to compare and contrast them. So if you're interested in machine bed versus material surface, you'll want to hang around for that. If not, then I'll see you whenever. So next week is open Q&A. Bring your questions, and I will try to supply answers. I will get my two-sided machining videos linked in the description, both of them. And I will find a link to the Corian guide on routing and CNC routing. Corian, channel members, tomorrow, I think I've got something good for you. Tomorrow at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, members only live stream. And you guys are sending me some excellent pictures, and we got some things to talk about. I'm here to tell you what, and some unfinished business to attend to. If you would like information on how to become a channel member, just click that little join button right next to the subscribe button. It doesn't obligate you to anything. Just click that join button, and a panel will pop up, and a video will play that'll tell you all about channel membership. But as always, whether you become a channel member or not, whether you subscribe or not, thank you for spending part of your Sunday here with me. Thank you for all the video views, the comments, the likes, the shares. Please keep those comments coming. That's where I get ideas for more videos. And until then, as Andrew W. says, it's coffee time. Y'all take care. Get out in the shop, make some chips, and thank you for everything.